Hey guys, so really excited to be back here with Dr. Josh Trutt, Chief Medical Officer here at Kuros, and we're going to talk about a really complex subject today. We're going to talk about what it actually means to stay healthy and how our bodies are trying to stay healthy. And I'll preface it by saying that we are really complex organisms, and I'm learning more and more how complex and all of the variables that go into it. We're never going to be able to address it all in this one video. So we're going to address some concepts and we're going to try to dive in where we can, but in other videos we'll go into greater depth and we'll learn more about what's actually going on. So one of the things that keeps coming up in my world is this idea of healthy cellular function.
Sure.
And I guess my question for you is, what's keeping our cells from doing their job, right? Like, why do we have to talk about healthy cellular function? Aren't they healthy?
Right. So we're used to thinking of our body on a macro level, right? You have your liver, and that's doing detoxification. You have your heart, and that's pumping the blood. Your lungs are processing the oxygen. So we understand if you have a disease of one of those organs, then that process breaks down. But really, all of those organs are made up of billions and billions of tiny cells, and they have to each be able to do their job. So when we talk about taking in toxins and dealing with toxicity, it's actually at the cellular level that things are breaking down first. Okay, and there are. You asked, what keeps them from doing their job?
Right.
So I just kind of mentioned a few of the organs that are in our body, but actually our cells also have organs. We call them organelles, tiny organs. Right. And two of the important ones. One is the mitochondria, which are the energy, the powerhouse of our cells. So the mitochondria is like our engine room. And its job is to make something called ATP, which is the unit of energy that our cells use.
To do whatever job.
To do everything. Without ATP, life is over. Right? And without ATP within one cell, that cell's life is over. And if it can't make quite enough ATP, then that cell is alive but compromised. Right? And so disease and also aging, just the breaking down that happens with aging, is the process of, happens when our cells are no longer able to make enough energy to do their job. Right? So that's number one. Number two, another organelle that's in there is called the nucleus. And the nucleus contains our DNA. And DNA is the instruction manual for the cell for everything that it needs to do. All the proteins that it needs to make are contained in the instruction manual. So the concern is what happens if the DNA gets damaged? And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about toxicity. Okay, when we, whether it's from the sun's rays, damage from the sun's rays, that's causing DNA damage. And the instruction manual gets messed up and the cell isn't sure how to proceed or proceeds in a way that's dangerous for the rest of the body.
And we can both be born with some damage to that guidebook or to how our DNA is supposed to function through our genetics. And then as I'm learning more and more, especially from you, about the fact that there's also this idea of epigenetics, that's our lifestyle and our environment, right? So we actually can be impacting, both for positive and for negative, at least the epigenetic factor. Is that true?
Sure, yes. Epigenetics is going to become a bigger and bigger topic. It has been steadily kind of gaining speed over the past 20 years. And it's another way of thinking about environment, nurture. So we used to say nature versus nurture, right? And now we're talking a little bit about nature versus epigenetics, which means things that happen in our environment that affect our genes and affect their ability to give the proper instructions.
Which could be what we're eating, or like you said, the sun's rays, or radiation, or toxins from living next to some sort of factory or something. It could literally be almost anything. So we're not going to be able to dive into that because those are big concepts, but important kind of framework to understand, right? And I guess the
minor thing that I would throw in there about that is that aside from toxicity, which we just discussed, your body also has the need to make like 200 billion new cells every day. Just to keep things going, keep things running. And that means that that's a lot of DNA that it has to copy. for the next cell. And if you're copying 200 billion cells worth of DNA, that's a lot of opportunity to make some mistakes. So that's another way that DNA damage happens, is in the natural process of cell replication. And in some of the natural cell functions that it has to do, there are opportunities in there which we won't get into today for DNA to be damaged. So your body has to have ways to repair that.
Right. And so our cells, is it fair to say that our cells replicate because they want to produce a younger, healthier version of itself?
Yeah. Well, in some cases they're replicating because you've damaged your skin and you need to produce more to heal the wound. We need to create new blood cells. So yes, it's replenishing what gets lost.
And so what systems, do we have to support that process of replication? Because you said 200 billion cells a day is a lot, right?
Right. So there are a few things that our bodies do. First of all, we have a DNA repair system in place, and it's pretty effective. It gets at least 99% of the mistakes that are made, probably more. But occasionally a mistake will slip through. Right. Also, we have detoxification system in place, where we're able to neutralize toxins that come into our body in order to prevent DNA damage from occurring in the first place. Right? If those fail and cells do get damaged, we use a process called cell cycle arrest. Right? So instead of replicating, instead of the cell cycle of life, of replication, we stop, we hit pause, and wait and say, listen, this cell is damaged. Think of it like getting a flat tire, right? So if you have a flat tire, you realize, hey, I have some damage to my tire. I'm not going to keep driving because I'll get further damage to the rest of the car. I'm going to pull over. So that's cell cycle arrest. You pull over and repair the flat, and then you can keep going, right? The next layer after that is what happens if you have too much damage and you can't repair it, right? It's beyond the capability of your cell to repair it. So in that case, you have another system of defense called apoptosis. And what that means is the cells around that cell, or sometimes within that cell, give it a signal, hey, you have to stop replicating permanently. Right? You have to essentially commit suicide, to use a dramatic phrasing. And this is super common. 60 billion cells in our body do that every day.
So so check in, right? So basically what's happening is before our cell replicates, it stops itself. It says, am I healthy to replicate? The flat tire scenario. If it finds an issue and it can fix it, great, and it kind of goes on to the process. If it doesn't find an issue, or if there's an issue that's present, but it can't recognize it, it can go through this process called apoptosis, where it naturally expires and says, I'm not going to replicate myself because I'm too broken to continue. Got it.
Right. And if that also fails, if a cell manages to bypass those mechanisms of apoptosis, which, by the way, that's what happens in a tumor. It's getting all these messages from the cells around it, hey, you need to stop replicating, and it manages somehow to bypass that. It doesn't listen, right? So when that happens, we have another sort of fail-safe. You have cells called natural killer cells, another dramatic term.
Seriously dramatic.
Right. And their job is they're kind of like bouncers. They go through your bloodstream and they're looking for cells that really don't belong anymore. And they will try to take them out of the system forcibly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. And these were things that you've introduced back to me, and just as a layman, again, it's like the better that I can kind of understand what's happening, it gives me such a better context for how I can impact it.
Right, so these are the things we're talking about when we're talking about improving our cellular health, is what can you do to support cell cycle arrest, apoptosis, mitochondrial function, the energy that runs the entire system. Those are all the things that we look to support in what we do.
And it makes sense, right? It makes sense that what we eat, the nutrients that those functions need to do their job, has a big impact, right? If we're eating donuts every day, those things are just not going to be able to do their job as well as they could. It'd be like, it'd be like filling your car not with engine oil, but with sugar, right? Quite literally sugar. And that to me is one of the things that's so interesting, just kind of about what we're seeing in the wellness space in general. Again, as a layman, is there's a lot of opportunities that we now have to eat better and to supplement our diet with the things that science is telling us those functions need to function, right? So that's one of those other things that to me is amazing, is all of this science is there, right? And there's more science being delivered every day, and there's such an incredible opportunity to use that real science, peer-reviewed real science, to help us understand how we can be doing a better job of staying healthy. And we're going to address a lot of these concepts moving forward. It's a lot. We want you guys really healthy. I know I want to be healthy. I know you want to be healthy. I know you work every day to keep your patients healthy. And I appreciate you just taking a moment to kind of talk through this. And hopefully we'll be able to share a lot more. And if you guys have any questions or anything that we can help address, leave a note in the comments, and we'll go from there. But Dr. Trutt, thank you very much.
Always.
And we'll talk to you guys soon.